to Inside ArtScroll, where the books that we read and the people that write them come to life. You know, I've been doing Inside ArtScroll, Baruch Hashem, for quite some time. And I think I could say with an open heart, Belev Shalom, that today's interview, to me, is the most meaningful and the most precious. Baruch shehechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. It's a schus, and what a pleasure to welcome Rabbi Paysach Krohn to ArtScroll Studios.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you said that bracha, because I would say amen on that bracha, because you know the medical incident that I went through a few months ago. I couldn't imagine in my wildest dreams that I'd have this chus to be able to come back to ArtScroll, a place that I love to be. When they were on Coney Island Avenue, I used to go there all the time. And, you know, when they came here also, it's a trip from Queens, but still, I love this place. I feel they do so much for Klal Yisrael. I'm so proud to be part of it.
Well, I think two like-minded entities meet whenever you come here. So Yasher Koach, Rabbi Krohn.
Thank you.
Rabbi Krohn, Mazel Tov, on the book to be released very shortly, the Maggid on Tefillah, stories and insights to elevate your davening. And Rabbi Krohn, it's such an amazing thing that you're putting out yet another book, and particularly after your stroke about a year ago.
Right.
Rabbi Krohn, you wrote a lot of this book before the stroke, after the stroke. Like tell us a little bit about the book.
That's a good, interesting question. I wrote a lot about, I would say less than half before, but what I did, I have a wonderful daughter, Chaviva, she goes by the name Chaviva Krohn Pfeiffer, and she's a marvelous writer, and many times I would dictate to her, and she would type it, or I would dictate to my wife and they would type it, and then I would edit it once they printed it out. So a lot of it came afterwards.
Amazing. And I noticed that you wrote in the book that your connection to Tefillah definitely intensified since your incident, and that
Right.
the davening is different than it was before.
Yeah, there's no question. For example, I'll give you a small example. You know, we make the berachos hashachar every morning, and you know, that you could see and that you could walk. And one of the brachas that you make is Zogiv Kefufim. Hashem straightens out those that are bent. So if you would ask 9 out of 10 people, they would say that means if somebody's hunchback, you know, Hashem straightens him out. But to me, all of a sudden, I got a different pshat, because when I had the stroke, I couldn't move my fingers. And then I realized, wait, Zogiv Kefufim. The Abish just gave me the koyach to straighten out my fingers. Now this is a miracle, believe me, I could not do this. And when I was in Kessler Rehabilitation Unit, that was part of the therapy, to see if I could take my thumb and touch each of my fingers, which was impossible. For me to lift my index finger was literally impossible. So now every morning when I say Zogiv Kefufim, I think about my fingers. And you know, that's a new insight in a bracha, which I would never have had before.
That's remarkable. Can you take us back a little bit, you know, when you first started? What was the impetus? Rabbi Krohn Kanai Nahar, you're a prolific author. You have so many different, this is just a small sampling of some of the books and svarim that you were zeicha to put out.
Well, what happened was, back in 1964, I was in Eretz Yisrael for the first time. And at that time, that was the first time I saw Rabbi Shlomo Landau, the Maggid of Yerushalayim. Now, my father, Olav Shalom, used to get cassettes. I had a cousin, Chaim David Ackman, who was living in Hebron, and in those days he would send us cassettes of Rab Shalom, who was the Maggid of Yerushalayim. And my father loved those. I mean, at the table on Shabbos, we always davened in the first minyan, so that we would have Kiddush after the first minyan at home, and then my father would learn with us Ayin Yaakov. And we learned Ayin Yaakov every Shabbos until we had the Suda. And of course, many times he would quote the Duvna Maggid. And he loved the Duvna Maggid, my father. So when he heard that there's a Maggid in Yerushalayim, he used to listen to the tapes all the time, to the cassettes. And then we found out that he's coming to America. And my father said he has to be by us. And the guy who was by us that Shabbos was laughing, Rafi Brenner. He worked for Chinuch Atzmoi. He said, well, Menachem Parish has a place for Rav Shradron. My father said, he has to be by us. You know, for Maggid is coming, that's what it is. So that night, I still remember, he took his own bed and he put it up on the 3rd floor, and so there would be a bed for Absalom. And we heard he's coming with somebody else, Rabbi Yisrael Grossman. So my father put a 2nd bed up there. And then the next day, we found out from this guy, Rafi Brenner, who was in the house, that there was so much rainstorms in Eretz Yisrael, the planes couldn't leave, so Rabbi Shalom was delayed for 2 or 3 days. And I have this story in the book the Maggid speaks, right in the beginning. It's right here. Okay. It's fascinating. And what happened was, so my father went to the airport to meet a person he never saw. But I had seen Rabbi Shalom when I was in the Knesset Gedolah the previous summer. My father had sent me there. At that time, the apartment already was taken in Borough Park, so when we came to the airport, Menachem Porer said to Rafi Brennan, "Where's any dimension? Who are these people?" He said, "Number Ken Essen Bazay." I was there Shabbos. So we took Rabbi Shalom to the house, and I never forget, on the Van Wyck Expressway, Rabbi Shalom, he told us he was 53 at that time, and my father said, "Rabbi Shalom soll's wissen, unser Haus ist dein Haus." Any chumrah that you have, you could have, whatever you want. And Rabbi Shalom came inside. Now, I wish I could show you a picture of it, but my father built a beis medrash next to his office. A huge room with svarim, and that's where my father used to learn. That's where I learned with him. That's where I learned Masechta Tainis. You're finishing Masechta Tainis with your son. That's where I learned Masechta Tainis, in that room. And Rav Shalom never saw anything like it in America. And, you know, he was so moved that in America, in Treifa, America, somebody would build a beis medrash next to his own office just to connect, just to have svarim to be able to learn. He couldn't believe it. And then my mother, you know, prepared a suda for him, and you know and they treated him like a king. And then he said to my father, Rabbi Avram, "Why are you treating me like this? I don't know you, you don't know me." So my father took out the tape recorder and he started playing the cassettes that my cousin Chaim David used to send us. And Absalom was so amazed, like he couldn't imagine that from so far today. It's not like today that, you know, you make a call to Eretz Yisrael in 2 seconds. And things didn't travel back and forth like that. And then he couldn't believe it. And then he told Rabbi Saul Grossman. Rabbi Saul Grossman said he has a cousin in Borough Park who wants him to stay there. Rabbi Saul says, "The kannst kommen, was du willst, aber ich stehe da."
You could do what you want?
Right.
I'm here.
I'm here. And then you could join me. They have a place for you. So Rabbi Yisrael stayed for 3 months. And that's how I got to know his son, Yitzchak David, who, you know, from Migdal Emek, started in my home, the Migdal Or office. And Rabbi Shalom stayed 6 months. And he became like a Zayda in the family. He was at my chasana.
And that's where your whole connection of the Maggid started.
Maggid stories.
Now let's segue for 1 minute to the Maggid on Tefillah.
Right.
The vast majority of the books are story books.
Stories.
And also focused on seasons, Yomim Tovim.
Right, insights.
What was the catalyst to write a book on Tefillah?
You see, I'm a big believer, and I brought it. I have to get Voltaire to show it to you. I'm a big believer in underlining your svarim. My Gemaras are all marked up. I have a whole system marking up the Gemaras. I brought my Chumash to show you. It's highlighted in yellow. I'm a big believer that your svarim can be your best friend. Besides your wife, your svarim can be your best friend. So my Chumash is underlined. If I ever darshan on an Orach Chaim or a Sivzei Chachamim or whatever, it's always underlined. And anytime I learn something that I feel that I want to connect to again, I highlight it. I always carry a yellow highlighter with me. And like this, you know, the next time I go back to it, I think about, like, why did I highlight this? What lesson did I learn from it? And then I began to realize that there are expressions in Tefillah that are so moving. For example, in the Halukos we say, Haroife lishvurei lev. So I once heard a Rebbe say, what are the first 3 letters of those 3 words? Hey, Lamed, Lamed, Hallel. Haroife lishvurei lev. That's the praise we're giving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in my siddha, I started underlining that. And the reason is so that when I'm davening, I know that life is not only about you. What could you do for some people? There's so many people that are tzubrochen. So every morning when you see it and underlined, they can't say I think about it every morning, but it's there, it's underlined. Haroife lishvurei lev. Hallel. And so therefore, you know, that's the biggest praise. That's the best thing that you could do. And then I began to realize that the siddur is a way of teaching you life, what you should do with life. For example, in Baruch She'amah, I have a great story in the book about the Skolana Rebbe. And he was in a very difficult matzav. He was in jail. And he was saying Baruch She'amah. And Baruch She'amah is very positive. The mantras are positive. And then all of a sudden it says Baruch Goyzim Makayim. And that's a terrible thing. The Eibush makes a gzeira, and then he's makayim it. It doesn't fit into Baruch Shama. And the Rebbe said he would say this over every year later. And my cousin Calvin Trieben heard him say it. He said, I said to the Eibush, don't let me out of this jail until I figure out what does that mean? How does Goyzer Makayim fit in here? And then he said, I realized, Makayim doesn't only mean to fulfill. Makayim means he gives you kiyum, to exist.
In the Gzeira.
In the Gzeira. Baruch Goyzer, the Eibush is gebenched because sometimes he has to make a Gzeira on an individual or on a family. But Makayim, it gives you the strength to exist. And I tell you the truth. So I have that underlined, and I tell people everybody goes through challenges. I mean, right now I'm going through a challenge, obviously, with the stroke. I have to go with a walker. I can't walk, without a cane or a wheelchair, but I try not to use the wheelchair. I try to use the walker. But, to get to a shul, to get into a car. So what the Eibush is giving me, Umakayim, I have it underlined, that the Eibush gave me that gzeira for whatever reason. But Umakayim is giving me the strength to be able to go through it and giving me people, Baruch Hashem, who are very, very helpful. Voltaire, who is my aide, is mama's like a Malach Elikim from the Philippines. And my wife, Beli Ayin Hora, is just so amazing. I said, I tell her all the time, Mim, I don't know how I could ever repay you. She said, you can't.
Articulate.
Yeah, right to the point.
Rabbi Krohn, I think a lot of people struggle with tefillah. You do it every single day.
Right.
There's the routine, the monotony. How does a person strengthen himself, besides for buying the book, which I'm sure helps a lot? What could we do? What are some practical strategies of things that we could do that our tefillah should become more meaningful?
I think there are two books that every year should own. Rav Schwab on prayer, which of course was printed by ArtScroll, and Avram Chaim Feuer Zolzang on Shemoneh Esrei. When you learn the meanings of the words of Ashrei or Shema, take parts of davening and learn the meanings of the words. Now I'm about tefillah for Shachris on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So in my machzor, before ArtScroll came out with a machzor and the translation, I wrote the words in English. So if you know what you're saying, then it's a different story. In the first Simon of Shulchan Aruch, it says it's better to daven less with more kavanah than to daven more with less kavanah. So, just take a part of davening, whether it's Baruch Shema or Ashrei or Yishtabach, and concentrate on the meaning of the words and see if there's an expression that you would underline that, that makes it talk to you. And my sitter is talking to me. I brought you my sitter to show you, what it means to underline or to highlight. Like, for example, Altira. I have a whole story about Altira. And it says Ani 5 times. Why does it say Ani 5 times? And I'm a big believer that Chazal, or the ones who are Masada the Tefillah, wanted that when you finish davening, just remember that it's not about you. Life is not about you. What does it say? Ani Esa, Ani Asisi, Ani Amalek, Ani Esba of Amalek. I help, I do, I care. Not I want, I need, I crave. So in every single Altira, after every Oleno, in my city, they're all circled, the Anis, to show you, and that I try to remember, it's not about you. It's what Ani, Davish is also Ani, but he's helping. Ani help, Ani Esa, Ani Amalek.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and so therefore, I think if you underline words, and if you know the meanings of the words, you take small halakim of the davening and concentrate on those. For example, let's say in Rafa'inu, I have a whole list of people, that I daven for in Rafa'inu. And, when you think about those people, so then all of a sudden Rafa'inu is a different tefillah. There are people that that are in pain, whether it's Rabbi David Cohen, who is now having problem with his eyes, so David ben Esther Malka, or I have a brother whose granddaughter is getting married tonight, but he's having a lot of difficulty breathing. He has certain pneumonia. I was hoping that he would be able to be at the chasana. Hopefully he'll be able to be there. But when you daven Ayazev ben Hinda, and you think for a second, so all of a sudden that tefillah is a different type of tefillah. Like I know a woman who never had school, I don't want to say which one, they haven't paid her pension, they didn't pay her pension for years, and then they fired her. So they owe her a fortune of money. So, obviously I can't say the name of the school or her name, But when I daven Baruch Aleinu, I have her name written down. That's Parnos. The school owes her money, and it's not right. And I daven for her that she should be able to get her money back. So that's because I'm thinking of what Baruch Aleinu was all about.
Rabbi Krohn, one of the things that I was very struck by in the Sefer and the book is the idea that you had about your own personal sitter. Share with us a little bit more about that.
So I'll tell you, I have this sitter that I try to take all over. And for example, here I have a list of the people, that I daven for, for refuah shlema. So I keep it with me in the sitter. So over here, Yishal HaKetza Yom Mashiachenu Leftois Machake Keit Yishu Asai. So this pasuk in Yigdal to me is very special because who's going to live to see Mashiach? The ones who hope for it. Machake Keit Yishu Asai. We say that, we hope for Mashiach, but you ever think about Mashiach throughout the day? When do you think about it? So I'll show you in Shemoneh Esrei what Rav Schwab says. Es semach David avdecha. So I have, written down, Es semach David avdecha. Just like a plant takes a long time to come, Mashiach also takes a long time to come. So it's, it takes a while. Umatzapin Yeshua. So Rabbi David Cohen once told me a great story about Umatzapin Yeshua, because these words is only in Sfard Siddur, not in Ashkenaz. Right. And where did it come from? So he told me once that in the Sephardic places, the children, when the Baal Tefillah, the Chazan, or the one who was doing Chazor Sashatz, when he said Ki l'shuascha kiminu kol hayom, the kids would cry out Mitzapim Lishua, Mitzapim Lishua, and then they incorporated it in part of the Shemoneh Esrei, because the little kids used to run around and say that.
So you have that circled and underlined.
So I have it underlined, yeah.
Beautiful. That's such a beautiful idea. And
Yeah.
if anyone that's watching this,
Yeah.
go buy a sitter,
Yes.
make it your own.
Make it your own, right.
And it's mamish, every page come out, you have something on.
Something, I can't say every page, but I have many, many. Mater Asurim. Now, for me, Mater Asurim has many, many meanings. Now, I wrote Efshe Gam Ken Shiduchim because the Moitzi Asirim B'Kosheros, the Gemara in Soita says, is referring to people that are not married yet. So Mater Asurim could have that meaning also. At least that has to me. So I wrote number one and I put it, on top. Efshe Zeh Shiduchim. Moitzi Asirim B'Kosheros, Soita Beis Amud Aleph. So, that's something that I've thought about it once. I can't say I would think about it every day, but I wanted to write it down. So when I'm davening, I'm thinking about those that need shidduchim, both men and women.
It's interesting when I think about l'toiva v'levracha in Rosh Chodesh benching, or in Yalav v'yavai, or even in Shemoneh Esrei, Gemara says matzah isha, matzah toiv. So I think shidduchim at that part, like
that's right.
Chaim toivim is a life with a shidduch.
That's right.
So we all have our own personal connections to the siddur.
Right.
Beautiful. That's very magnificent.
Now, for example, in Atar Choinel Yoram Das, it says v'choneinu. Who's the choneinu? Who are you davening for? V'choneinu, right? So I have in mind all doctors, that they should have the right wisdom to give the right prescriptions. And I wrote down 5 things. I'm embarrassed. Okay, one thing is doctors, and that the IDF, that they should make the right decision. This was when the war was first starting in Eretz Yisrael. So they should have the right, the commanders or the generals. So v'choneinu, we're all part of that, who needs the das from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then I wrote that I should be able to have, understand Torah, I should be able to understand world events, and I should be able to give chizuk to people.
Wow.
So I have that written down here. So when I'm thinking of v'choneinu and v'lamed le'enesh bina, in what things bina, not just understanding.
And the important things.
Important things, right, important things.
Amazing.
And you wouldn't always think about it, but if you have it written down here, you're going to think about it at least some of the time.
Rabbi Krohn, if I could segue for a minute.
Sure.
What I find one of the most beautiful things about all of your books and all of your svarim is that there's a gorgeous Dvar Torah that's practical and relevant, and almost always there's an accompanying story.
Yes.
You somehow get the right story with the right message. Rabbi Krohn, where do you get your stories from?
That's a great question. There are many, many people who come over to me, especially wherever I am. I could be sitting on a plane and somebody will come over to me. "Oh, Rabbi Krohn, a story just happened, and my wife said it's a Rabbi Krohn story." Like it became a new adjective. So people will stop me at a chasna. I remember one lady was stopping me as I was crossing the street. I said, "Can we wait till we get to cross the street?" And so people, and I read I read some biographies, and I read other, they're wonderful books. I listen to you also. You have some great stories, and I've quoted you. And I try always, anytime I hear a story, to go back to that person, to try, to get the real, the facts of the story.
Rabbi Krohn, what do you suggest is the best way to read this book, to learn this sefer, really?
Yeah.
A little bit a day, a seder where you learn it. Like, what would you recommend to someone that's buying the book that they can get the maximum impact?
That's a very good question. What I would think is, let's say, what I tried to do in the index was to show which parts of the tefillah, I wrote about. So let's say you're davening Modeh Ani, and you want to know, is there something special that I should think about by Modeh Ani? So I'll tell you an amazing story that I have in the book. And I think about that. In the book, there's a story that there was a neurologist conference. And in this neurologist conference, there were many people from all over the world. And there was this woman from England who was talking about the idea that certain people, when they get up in the morning, if they get up very quickly, they faint. And what causes that? And so she had a whole theory that she wrote about and she spoke about, and she presented at this neurologist conference that the blood rushes from one part of the body to the other if a person sits up very quickly. And I wrote in there an amazing story, which I'll tell you, but to me the most amazing thing is the Mishnah Brura argues with the Shulchan Aruch. I mean, where do you ever see that? If you take a look at Siman Aleph, Sif Aleph, it says, Yokum B'Zrizos, and the Mishnah Brura writes, Lav Davka. I can't believe the Chofetz Chaim's arguing with the Shulchan Aruch. And he says, because if you get up very quickly, it can be mazik l'guf. Yes. So the story goes that this lady said that you need 12 seconds. You get up, don't jump out of bed, just sit for 12 seconds. So there was a frum neurologist who was there, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you, we as Jews, we have a prayer that we say in the morning when we get up in the morning. We thank God that we woke up and that we're healthy. And he said the prayer in Hebrew, and he counted on his fingers. Modeh Ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim shechazarta bi nishmosi v'chem rabba amuna 12.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. So everybody gave him a standing ovation.
I think I heard from you, Rabbi Krohn, that there was I'm 99% sure you said this, that there was a CEO, a woman or something, that she had a lot of toxicity in her life, in her professional and personal life, and she decided that the way she's going to change it is by being positive the first thing in the day, being grateful the first thing in the day. I think, Rabbi Krohn, you're the one that said a bunch of years ago.
It could be.
And it changed her whole life.
Yeah.
And you said, Rabbi Krohn, that, what do you mean? We've been doing this for thousands of years.
That's
we start off our day with gratitude, and the rest of the day is different.
That's right. When I speak about Hakara Satoiv, I said the first words we say in the morning is Modeh, to say thank you. Now, I'll tell you what I wrote in the book, and this is something that I do myself, especially since after the stroke. Every night when I go to sleep, which including last night, before I, fall asleep, it's already quiet. I think of 10 things that I should say the pasuk Hodu Hashem ki tov ki li'olam chasdei. Like what happened? 10 things, 10 wonderful things that happened. And one of the things tonight will be, that I was able to come here and, be interviewed by you.
I hope that when I go to sleep tonight, I'll also be able to say the same thing.
That's right.
Thank you for giving me another thing to be grateful for.
No, but I believe that, and you could say it with the Shemoneh Malchus because it's a pasuk. Hodu Hashem ki tov ki li'olam chasdei. And I do say it with the Shemoneh Malchus. And that's a way of, you're always looking for the good. And when you look for the good, you become a better person. I'm a big believer in writing thank you notes. Oh, I've called you a few times.
Called me, left me messages,
right.
And they change my day every time.
And Shmuley Besser says the same thing. He says, nobody writes me letters, about, the articles that I write except Rabbi Krohn. I'm a big believer in saying thank you because it makes you a better person. You're looking to say thank you.
Or Rei B'tuv, you're looking for the good.
Rei B'tuv, right, that's right, Rei B'tuv, exactly, Rei B'tuv Yerushalayim.
Speaking about gratitude, I just want to take, because this interview feels like it was 1 minute. Actually, the time is up. I want to be makar type to you for making the long trip from Queens. And like you said, Haidu Hashem ki tav k'lam chaste. Thank you, Rabbi Shalom, that Rabbi Paysach Krohn was able to come back to ArtScroll Studios, that another beautiful book is coming, and it's a transformational. I already had a chance to taste it in a substantial way. It's helping me already in my davening. And on behalf of Klal Yisrael, thank you, Rabbi Shalom, for bringing Rabbi Krohn back for the refuah and the Yeshua that he sends you.
Can I tell you a great story? One of my favorite stories.
You should finish with the story, because I wanted you to have the last word anyways.
No, I just want to tell you one of my favorite stories, and it's in the book, of course. I heard it from Rabbi Melech Biederman, who's a great speaker. You should interview him one day.
Halavai.
Halavai. I don't know what language. But anyway, he told a story about this poor family. The mother sent the kid out to buy fruit, but they didn't have much money. So he comes into the store and he sees this gorgeous bowl of cherries, and he's looking at the cherries, a glutze, he wants to have some, but he can't, he can't afford it. He comes to the counter and he has a tomato and an apple, and he gives the guy the money. So the guy behind the counter says, Yingila, I saw you were looking at the cherries. Why don't you take some cherries? He said, I can't afford it. My mother gave me money, and they could only, he says, no, I'm the owner of the store. I'm telling you, I'm behind the counter, but I own the store. You could take some cherries. He said, no, I just can't. It's not right. He said, no, I'll take it for you. He says, no, I don't feel it's right. So, again, he wants to pay for the tomato and the apple. And then the guy says to him, he comes back a second time, he says, listen, Yingila, go back over there, take a look at the cherries and take some. So he says, I can't do it. We just can't afford it. So he said, okay, then I'm going to have to take some for you. So he said, okay. So he goes back and he's looking at the cherries again. Then he comes back to the counter. And the guy says, I told you could take cherries. So I'm going to take some for you. And he brings him some cherries and he puts it in the bag. And the kid comes home with the cherries. And the mother says, where'd you get these cherries? You stole them? He said, oh no, chas v'shalom. And she tells him the whole story. So she says to him, so why did you wait the second time until he said he was going to go get them for you? He told you the first time you could go. He says, no, Ma, he has a bigger hand than I have. So he said, that's the pshat Paysach Yadecha. We ask Hashem, open your hand, because your hand is bigger.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so...
You should keep being a recipient of the Rabbi Shalom's hand and
my.
see his hand, the Yad Hashem in your life.
Amen.
You should have a refuah shalema and shlo michayil chayil.
And I'll tell you another thing that I do. I have it over here, a Tillim. I'm a big believer in saying 5 parokim of Tillim a day. And again, I have certain psukim underlined or highlighted. Let me see. Imrul alikim adonu masechon. Because I'm daven Shachris and Rosh Hashanah, that's Imrul Alekim. So now I'll know where it is. It's taken from over here.
I see you have notes also.
Yeah, in my Tillim, yeah. And then at the end, every time I finish Tillim, I write it down. I'm a big believer in writing things down, because these are all the times that I finish Tillim.
Wow, that's so inspiring.
And it makes you feel good. In my Gemara, I would show it to you. Every time I learn an omen, I make a mark underneath. Now, my goal was, before I started writing these books, that I would have a comment in Shas on every daf from Rabbi Krohn, because I've been learning with him for years. But then I started writing. When I wrote the Bris Milah book, I realized that I wouldn't be able to, to learn with him as much as I was doing before with the Siddurim that we have, because I'm writing the book. So he said to me something I could never forget. I said to him, Rabbi, what should I do? Should I continue learning with you so I can get a note on every daf, or I should write the Bris Milah book? He said, I'll ask you a question, you tell me the answer. What's more important, Torah de Yochad or Torah de Rabbim? So he said, if you write a good book on Bris Milah, thousands of people will read it. That's Torah de Rabbim. That's more important than your specific learning. And I was so inspired from that. And that's really what this is all about. The idea is Torah de Rabbim. You want people to be able to feel that they can look at Modeh, they'll learn something. They look at Adonai, or a kind of Tzor L'Sheni Meirah. Talks over there about having anivas if you daven the Tzachsvard, and being careful with the language. So all these things that the Siddur is a guide. The Siddur, talks to you if you make it a business, that you want to listen to it, and that's really what my goal is.
Friends, if you watch this interview, go out there, buy the Maggid on Tefillah. It'll change your Tefillah. It'll change your life. Thank you so much, Rabbi Krohn, for
But
your
then
time.
they should also buy a siddur.
Of course. After they buy their siddur and their tehillim, they should buy the Maggid.
Right.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Krohn. Really appreciate you coming here.
Thank you so much.